Pretty wired up.
Jeremy, what a great role for you. I mean,
Yeah.
you're one of my favorite actors, and I never use this because I never know what I'm going to get. And this was interesting because I got something. This must have been great for you to play.
Yeah. It was, I've been very, very blessed with this material. I think Peter is a great writer, and ultimately, it's hard for me to say, like, oh, yeah, it's such a great role and all these things, and make it so surface and about me, because, the ultimate tragedy and loss of Gary Webb and all these sort of things in his life, but, the things he did, and, it was just a great world. I mean, it's ultimately why I wanted to do it. So it was a great role. It was a great world. I love the idea of investigative reporting. There's a departure from a lot of the things I've done, being a father, being a husband, all these other things is really interesting to me. Yeah, very lucky.
How familiar were you with the story going in?
Didn't know it at all. And that's one of the reasons why I really needed to do it, because I grew up around Modesto, right around the corner from San Jose, and Sacramento, where this all took place.
And it was, you remember it hitting the fan, basically?
No, not at all.
Oh.
That was part of, like, why don't I not know about this? I knew, like, a big downstream part of it, which is like reading for a PSA for Is Your Brain on Drug, War Against Drugs kind of thing. I remember that in 92, 93 when I first moved to LA. Tore the room apart. Didn't get it, but I auditioned for it. That's my only recollection of, like, a really downstream version of what happened in this story.
Well, you deal with media and press on a daily basis, and it occurs to me from your limited standpoint of what you see, that's the press, right? And then maybe it's like actor, it covers a lot of territory. But when you have you had your sort of eyes opened about those guys who could die in the course of what they do? I mean,
yeah, sure. I spoke to a lot of guys that were reporting during war, which is, and just even war photographers, which is like a whole other interesting job.
But for this or
is that
for the Hurt Locker?
For Hurt Locker, yeah. And then after that as well, because I went to work with the UN, with Afghanistan, and work with them on demining and stuff. But it's no matter. But yeah, I have a lot more respect just for investigative reporting. I found a lot of weird relationships. That was the interesting part to me. I mean, story is a story, and how to get the story and pry it apart and dig in. And it's one thing. It's kind of like what I do with characters. I have to kind of dig in deep. But I found what's interesting is, like, editor relationship, other reporters, other papers. It's just there's a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of, like, it's very corporate. I felt like in a lot of papers, things I wasn't really thinking about. Because for Gary, it felt like he was such like a rogue, rebellish kind of anti-establishment kind of guy. Yeah, it was interesting. That's my takeaway on at least really working relationships.
How about do you trust what you read now?
I never really ultimately trusted what I read. Maybe half of it, And if I see it with my own two eyes, I still kind of am a little skeptic of things. I've always been that way, though. Been taught to be skeptical and to pry or ask questions, observe. You don't know the answer, shut up and listen, that kind of thing. That was how I was raised.
When you were doing research on him, what stuck out? A couple things that stuck out on what he might have been working on, what he probably was going through.
Working on as far as on the story or other stories, or
in this particular story.
Yeah.
Because sometimes when you're doing things like that, you just get obsessed and you want to get it complete, and then you're like, no one gets what I'm doing, and
he went well. Yeah, I know after he sort of, when he left the paper, that's what broke his back. The betrayal of the Merc, not really having his back. Everything else really didn't have any effect on him ultimately. It was the paper betrayal. And that's when he spiraled and decided to write on his own. And that was a long time. He went to write this book, and it was years. And he spiraled, and he went down a lot of rabbit holes. And there's some obsession and compulsion, I'm sure, that went on. And you can get led down these rabbit holes. You're hoping to kind of come back up. And you just, a lot of rabbit holes for him.
Have you talked to people?
Did you watch the home movies and Yeah, talk about that.
Well, it's my only sort of research I can do with Gary. There was limited stuff in the internet to grab, so the family was very open and generous with home videos, with the kids, with wife, he's playing hockey or whatever it might be, when he's at work, some interviews, some colleagues and weddings. So it literally gave me a slice of kind of like, who he was, and I can take and run with certain things and belief systems and how he spoke and sat and how he was with his children, what he was like when he was at work. And
what was the one thing that tipped the scales for you when you said, okay, I got it?
I don't know if there's anything that makes me feel that way. Like, I got it. I think it's a constant discovery.
Okay, so how about I'm a little bit closer?
I think that's once I do a scene, I'm a little bit closer. There's another color. There's another piece of the puzzle. Like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. Because a lot of times, like working with Rosemary or whoever the other actor is, that can be very. You can learn a lot doing that. And like, oh, you can read it on the page. It's one thing, but it's a lot of things I grabbed just from working with another tremendous actor.
So let me just rephrase this a little
Yeah.
bit.
Where
Do
you
you feel a
leading?
do you feel a responsibility to his memory in some way?
Yes, absolutely. Huge. I mean, I raise my arms in victory only because of this, because the family, Sue, and all the kids watched the movie. And, were adversely affected, and they were very proud. It was very cathartic, very difficult, and they could not be more proud and happy. And so again, I raised my arms in victory. I don't need anything else after that.
Did they say anything to you about it? About your performance of him?
Yeah, we spoke briefly about it. I had a difficult time with it, but it was great, and I'm so happy they're happy. It was hard for them, it was hard for me, and we both walk away with our heads up high and smiling. It's a wonderful feeling.
Okay, I'll walk away now.
I would imagine playing somebody who's obsessed with something might be something you understand, maybe in a role or something like that. But being obsessed with something to the point where you actually put his family in danger, was that hard to understand, or did you get that too about obsession?
Well, yeah. I mean, I understand that it's kind of self-serving thing. I don't think. Yeah, I would have an issue. I mean, as an observer, I have a huge issue with that, especially because I'm a guy that loves his family, loves his wife and his kids very, very much, and I don't think would ever do anything that puts them in danger. And that's where I think the obsessive bit, it's like, that's not really Gary thinking about that. He's so focused on something else, his work and his thing, and so yeah, that was my rationalization for, like, this guy's an asshole. His family's in danger. He's really gonna continue this, but that's kind of who he was. He's talking about more of aha moments. Like, that's kind of like a Gary Webb thing. He was like, you know what? That's where Gary Webb separates himself from other investigative reporters. He'll keep going to get the truth. You don't get half the truth. There's no such thing. You go get the truth, and here are things to back it up.
Rosemary said that one of the things that struck her about what he did and what journalists like him do is that you bust your gut, put your life on the line, everything else, and there's a story, and maybe people remember it tomorrow, maybe it gets blown out by Monica Lewinsky.
Right.
Is that something, I mean, an analogy could also be made to this movie. I mean, this isn't the Avengers, and I don't even think there have been very many movies about journalists, especially with the low regard a lot of people have towards them, that would indicate that this would, have millions of people going to see it. So how do you at the same time, he was motivated, you're obviously motivated by the performance you gave. How do you reconcile those two things?
We're reconciling
the
a popular subject, or
I wouldn't call it unpopular, but up against a juggernaut of entertainment that is not say about important things, or not as deep to, not as cutting to the soul, or about things that affect our everyday life.
Look, I mean, I'm taking it, you're ultimately asking me, why do this movie then?
No, I'm saying, yeah, what you're in the biggest franchise in the world,
Sure.
and you're in my opinion a really good movie about something that is important to people's lives, and,
Sure.
and an important figure that in the scale of how much attention it will get is like here and
Right,
here.
but you're thinking in terms of like how much attention it'll get.
Yeah,
I don't
that-
think,
that
I
would
think in
be-
terms of like how can I tell, for me as a performer, how can I be as truthful as I possibly can? This is here's the setup, here's a world, and here's a movie, and this is a movie that needs to be seen. It's a story that needs to be told.
How do you get people to, well, other than talking to us and us getting it out there? I mean,
Well, I think it's like day by day. It's like a painting. It's like you gotta put it in, put down the work, and hopefully it comes out well. Like no one goes to work every day hoping they're gonna write a crappy article or gonna make a terrible movie. You go and put the work in 100% every day. You get in, get after it, make it the best you can do it, and the movie turns out great, awesome. And still don't even know. I'm in a microcosm, still speaking to people that have seen the movie. But then when it goes out to more people, like, well, I'm going to do a lot of Q&As just at random theaters, because that's just interesting to me. This movie would probably be good for that.
I know the African-
I just wanted to
I know
ask
the
this
African-
because we're running out of time, but have you spoken to anybody from the LA Times or from the
No.
New York Times or Washington Post?
No.
Because that would be an interesting interview.
Yeah, actually, I'm doing an LA Times, a big calendar piece with them. So
You wonder if there'll be any mea culpas or guilt or...
yeah, I mean, I think they've already kind of put their 2 cents in on where they kind of stood on that. And everybody kind of
Never apologized.
they apologized, yeah, in their own way. Yeah, sure.
Jerry, I know one of the things that I wasn't surprised about is the African American community coming and championing him. They've always known this. It wasn't a secret to
Right.
where it was coming from.
Right.
Have you heard during the film or afterward doing anything, anybody coming out and saying this is what was going on in those communities at all? Not yet.
I mean, not directly, no. No. There's not nearly enough time to kind of go down those. Again, it's such a downstream aspect to the story. I wanted to focus more on the plight of Gary and what it was. As soon as you start opening the doors to that, it wasn't going to serve. It's plugging in at the end that it had the CIA. John Deutsch rolls over to Watts. It's like that's a whole movie in itself, because that's never been done and hasn't been done since. And yeah, I mean that's an amazing thing. But yeah, that's a whole.
There's a lot of
movie.
people who look
Two-part
bad in this
question.
movie.
What's that?
There's a lot of people who look bad in this movie, and they're
You look bad?
Yeah.
I suppose, I mean, it's, hopefully, everyone looks bad, good, whatever. I mean,
I have a 2-part question for you. Is this the first of your movies that you produced, and why you
Yes.
did that especially on this one? And also, what would you like people to take away from this film?
And this will be last question.
I mean, I would love people to take away a conversation, a debate, a smile, you're entertained, maybe a crushed heart, or something, an emotion or a thought. It's like an amazing thing to walk away with, something that sticks with you. And ultimately, you would be entertained, because we are watching a movie. And being reminded or shown something that's an important part of our society. I don't know, it's to walk away with an opinion.
And as a producer, were you on at the beginning? In other words, was this your project, and why did you want this particular story to be told?
I think it's because it is, we spoke about earlier, I thought it was a great role, I thought it was a great world, it was an interesting subject matter. Then I didn't know how relevant it was going to be when we first went down the road with Kill the Messenger. And my role as producer was only to, aggregate the cast, surround myself with really kick-ass people, and to help me along here, and get Michael Questa, our director. So that was the goings on for me to get the movie made.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks.
you know.
Did you ever need to walk away, were you more drained by making this movie than shooting an action scene? I mean, this is
Oh,
some finishing dark moments.
it was we had a short amount of time to shoot, you know, the movie, and so, yeah, it was emotionally draining. It wasn't like a physical part, it was like
Congratulations.
emotionally taxing. Thank you so much,
Well
thank you so
done,
much.
thank you.